speed and autofocus have been reimagined.
Canon is once again pushing the boundaries.
The portraits you can take with this camera, especially in combination with this lens, like I've never seen a crisp image like this.
The design and the build quality is there to withstand the harshest conditions.
With 8K, you can record the entire scene, and then in post, you can frame the shot. The possibilities that open with 8K are so many.
Two different shutter modes, the mechanical shutter, that's 12 frames per second, or the electronic shutter, that's 20 frames per second. That's pretty impressive.
I don't have time to do long time settings. My gear has to work.
We didn't set out to develop a mirrorless system particularly. We were looking to develop the system for the next 25 years.
From capture all the way to print.
Canon just made it easy for us.
It's a little bit addicting, looking at the world in a different way and seeing it up so close.
This allows me to shoot in a way that I couldn't before.
You don't need two cameras anymore. With just switching to one button, you can just start filming right away.
EOS R5 let me reimagine the way I shoot.
Wow, so a lot of innovations in there.
I'm not going to send this one back, Canon.
Wow, so a lot of innovations in there.
I'm not going to send this one back, Canon.
Hello, and welcome to Canon's Reimagine event and Canon's biggest launch to date. And thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for this rather special live Q&A. Now, for those of you who are wondering who I am, and I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that's probably all of you. My name is Lucy Hedges. I'm a technology journalist. I'm also the technology editor for the Metro newspaper in the UK, and it is an absolute honour to be your guest today, to be your host today. This is an incredibly exciting launch. I'm utterly chuffed to be playing your host. And it feels really good to be able to talk about the new and exciting and innovative products. And we've all been pretty tight-lipped about this for quite some time. So the fact that we're able to talk about it is really, really exciting. And that's what this live Q&A is all about. So let's just do a quick recap of exactly what has been launched. So we've got the newest or the latest members to join the EOS family, demonstrating Canon's commitment to mirrorless. So we've got the EOS R5, a mirrorless camera set to redefine the professional mirrorless snapper with high-resolution stills and video, 8K raw video, setting new standards for video capture. We, of course, have the EOS R6. Now, this is an ideal mirrorless camera for enthusiasts, photographers and filmmakers looking to push those creative boundaries with very impressive low-light capabilities, with both cameras boasting incredible jaw-dropping autofocus, incredible speed, next-level image, in-body image stabilization, and basically a couple of cameras that make handheld shooting a dream. And the best thing, Canon has managed to cram all this technology into two compact bodies. We've also got 4 new RF lenses, bringing telephoto capabilities to the innovative EOS R system lens lineup, alongside 2 new RF extenders. And last, but definitely not least, we've got the compact Image Prograph Pro 300 A3 printer. This is ideal for anyone who's looking to get into pro printing, or just, to refamiliarize yourselves with what it's like to actually hold a stunning print in your hand. Now, in case anyone missed the keynote earlier, or perhaps you just want to rewatch it and soak all the announcements in again, the keynote is available to watch on Canon Europe's YouTube channel. So it's good to know it's there. You can watch it whenever you like, knock yourselves out. So what can you expect for the next 2 hours? What's happening on this live stream over the next 2 hours? Well, Canon has, really set out to push the boundaries and break new ground when it comes to image quality and creative control, and achieve things that have never been done before. And it's certainly done that with this new product lineup. Now, I hope you're all sitting comfortably, because our Canon experts who have been working tirelessly on this new product range, and our awesome ambassadors who have been lucky enough to be among the first to get their hands on it, have got a lot to say, whether it's talking about the technical features or just learning more about how the ambassadors have been using them. We've had quite a lot of questions in already. But if you've got any burning questions that you'd like to ask our experts, don't be shy. Please get in touch and fire away. We would love to hear them. And on that note, let's kick things off, shall we? Our first session is all about the EOS R5. We've got Mike Burnhill joining me. This is Canon's Europe's professional image product specialist. Now, Mike has over 12 years experience in the game. So, you know, this guy knows his cameras. And we're talking about a camera here that's setting new standards for cutting edge features and all round performance. You know, a camera that redefines what a professional mirrorless camera can be, and a camera that's dripping with versatility and next gen technology. And Canon has really upped its game. You know, I mentioned earlier, we're talking 8K raw video shooting, astounding autofocus, brilliant 4K shooting options alongside high resolution stills and video, and just so many shooting possibilities. Now, before we dive headfirst into the EOS R5, we've got a VT that we'd like to show you. And we should be rolling to a VT. So on that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our ambassadors. So we've got Ulla Lohmann. She's a documentary expedition and adventure photographer who's regularly rewarded with amazing imagery in exchange for braving it against the elements. We've got Ivan D'Antonio, one of Italy's most promising filmmakers, who has picked up a number of awards for his short films, commercials, and music videos. And finally, we are joined by Robert Mark Lehman, a marine biologist, scientific diver, and underwater cameraman who has traveled to more than 100 countries, taking breathtaking images. Is it just me, or did all of their jobs just sound ridiculously cool? I feel like I need to rethink my career, maybe. So hi, guys, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to dive straight in. I'm going to dive straight in with the question for you, Mike.
Okay.
So can you kick things off by telling us the top line features of the EOS R5 and why Canon claims it will be why Canon claims it will redefine professional mirrorless?
Well, I think the video took a lot of my thunder from this question, but obviously it's got the 45 megapixels, but with the advanced processing that we've incorporated into this camera, those 45 megapixels squeeze as much data out as possible. So we're actually able to resolve with those 45 the same amount of details as our 50 megapixel camera. And when you couple that with the 20 frames per second and the 12 frames per second that the guys will be talking about very shortly, it really changes the game in what sort of action photographers can do. You know, that balance between high speed and high resolution has always been one or the other. But now you can get both in one amazing package, and video as well. It does everything. You know, you've got this amazing 8K video, which is the headlines. But I think we'll talk with Ivan a bit more about 4K delivery as well. But there's just too much to talk about, really. Squeeze it all in.
Yes, a key word there, squeeze. You know, Canon's managed to cram so much technological goodness into this camera. It's quite amazing. So Ulla, I've got a question for you. Let's talk about your experience with the camera and how you found the image quality.
I took the camera on an adventure. I started right outside the house, packed the bike, my son Manuk and my husband Basti, and we left for 200 kilometers. We kayaked, we hiked, we climbed, we biked, and we jumped through narrow gorges, and also I took the paraglider. So there's a lot of action in there. So I needed the speed, but also all these wonderful moments sleeping under the stars and sunsets, sunrises. I needed the details, the high resolution in the landscape. Before, I had to take 2 cameras for the job, but now there's all in one package, and on top I could film. So I think I found my new expedition partner.
Yeah, so it's almost completely revolutionized the way you work.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Mike, back to you for a bit of a technical question here. What can you tell us about the dynamic range of the EOS R5?
Well, there is no standardized testing. Everyone does their own little site testing. So we don't actually quote any figures. We leave that to third parties. But from all the testing that we've done internally, basically it's got one stop better performance than the 5D4 and the EOS R products before it, but with much higher resolution at the same time.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to go on for a bit longer then.
I can go on for longer if you want to. But
yeah, go on, tell us more. Tell us a bit more.
But yeah, so the dynamic range is just one part of the measurement. I mean, as I said, the image quality it's sharper. There's new processing, so it's much sharper. There's more detail. There's more dynamic range. So it's going to be one of our best performing cameras regarding dynamic range.
Yeah.
And obviously the high ISO performance is another thing that's amazing in this camera. It's one stop better than our EOS R and probably 2 stops better than the 5D4. And that's all with 50% extra resolution. So it's not just making it faster and high resolution, we're improving in every other area as well, image quality wise.
Yeah, yeah. Ulla, I just want to go back to you actually and just pick your brain on, you know, the type of photography that you were doing. Can you just kind of talk to us about the kind of images you were able to produce and how you found using the camera on the front line?
Well, basically you can imagine me dangling off a rock's face and trying to take pictures at the same time, then trying to control my height and everything. So I really need a camera which performs. You know, I don't have time to fiddle around with settings. I just need to get the shot and film at the same time, take pictures, and everything is so much demanding. But everything works really well with this camera.
Yeah.
So for me, it redefines the work and what I can do with it. Also, I was filming inside a canyon and photographing. So there you jump down waterfalls and you squeeze through little rocks. So I can't take tripods, you know, you jump down.
Yeah.
So there I really had to find a camera which can perform when I handheld it, go high up with the ISO range and also performs really well handheld.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point, being able to shoot handheld without needing the unnecessary bulk, the unwieldy tripod and all the gimbals and all the things that you need. It must be quite refreshing for you to be able to work like that.
I couldn't work before. I couldn't take images there, you know, and it was the first time that I could have these action shots. And also it was really dark inside these narrow gorges. So I needed the camera to focus fast on a fast moving subject.
Yeah.
And the camera was just locking focus on somebody jumping down. So I was really amazed. And I went like, yes, that's the shot. And that's my camera.
I love it. I just love the way your face is lighting up as well. True testament to how much you enjoyed this camera. Now, Robert, I've got a question for you. Now, as Mike said, the camera offers incredible animal subject tracking autofocus capabilities. Can you tell us what it's like to use the EOS R5?
That is correct. It's absolutely completely different from the cameras I was shooting before, because I was assigned to go to do the wildlife shots for this camera. And I was off to the northeastern part of Germany to shoot one of the fastest birds we have, the red kite, the black kite, and the sea eagle. Quite iconic birds, but they are super fast and very hard to shoot, as you can imagine. And so far, with my 1DX and tracking works quite well. But with this camera, it surprised me completely, because the autofocus system really locks into the bird and keeps the bird in frame. It's just absolutely impossible. I don't understand the technique behind it, but it's a deep learning autofocus system, and they put so much intelligence in it that really it just keeps the bird in focus all the time. It doesn't matter what the bird is doing, and they are super fast. They come down like 60 to 80 kilometers an hour. They splash into the water, and every single image was in focus and sharp. And I was like, This is impossible. I trained to do that for like 10 years, and now it's possible with this camera. It's just like, it made many things so much easier.
Yeah. Well, you know, birds aren't the easiest thing to photograph, so it's really nice to be able to rely on that autofocus system.
Especially the birds of prey. They are the fastest birds anyway, and it's now it's very easy for everyone. So go out and shoot wild birds.
Ulla and Ivan, do you have anything to add about your experiences with the autofocus capabilities?
My experience with the autofocus was really impressive because I shot 2 videos, one for yoga and one for landscape, and sometimes I couldn't predict what it will happen on the scene. So having the ability to track the focus on parts of the scene really helped me a lot. And I didn't have to think about focusing, but I had also only to concentrate on what I was shooting. So it helps really, really a lot.
That's good, because it kind of frees up your mind while you're shooting, and you can focus on what's important rather than having lots of things going off in your mind.
The camera is your best friend.
Yeah. What about you, Ulla? Oh, you're on mute.
I think that was my husband, because he didn't want to have me telling the story. Because he fell down the rock face. And normally he says, oh, nobody did see, I didn't take a fall. But now I could take him, I could photograph him taking a fall. And you could see every little move, why he fell. And then the camera pictured him dangling off in the void. So, yes, sorry about the censorship. I think it was Basti. He didn't want to let me know you guys the story.
And talk to me about your, you know, what else you guys are doing on the front line, and how important it is for autofocus to be as efficient as it is.
I mean, maybe I can answer that, because I was shooting the birds and you have like woods in the background, and it's very, very hard to get the focus onto the birds when you have wood in the background, because it basically, it moves within the woods. And to separate a brown bird from brown wood, it's just nearly impossible, but it was possible. So actually Canon reimagined all that autofocus system. And I even tried it with squirrels, my dog, all these birds, and with every single animal, and even humans I tried, it just keeps it in focus all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I can add something to this, because I had the wood in the foreground. I was shooting at the lake, and there was a swan behind, and the camera was locking focus onto the swan, and the whole grass in the foreground, it didn't jump focus. It stayed on the bird, and I could have this nice depth of field just onto the swan and not having the reed.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
I think a feature like this as well, it's great for, you know, professionals like you guys, but there are people out there who are, you know, really not sure what they're doing. So having a system like this is going to be amazing for them. They're going to think they're pros.
This is exactly what I said. Everybody is now able to do shots, which took me basically 10 years to train for. Thank you, Canon.
Okay, Mike, got a question for you.
Okay.
Following on from, you know, we were talking about autofocus and the amazing capabilities of the EOS R5. Can you tell us a bit more about the camera's processor and why it's at the heart of the autofocus capabilities?
Wow, yeah, the new Digic X processor, which we introduced with the 1DX Mark III, really elevated the amount of processing data that we could do. And the magic behind it was all done in advance with the engineers in Japan building a deep learning system. So we've managed to acquire, one of the benefits of being Canon, we have so many photographers and access to the world's leading wildlife and sports, and they were able to provide images, and we built a giant database of images that we could then teach the cameras how to recognize subjects. And that's why Robert and Ulla are saying amazing things, because the cameras learned how to recognize things that we do normally, recognize a person. For example, in sports, you know, people aren't always vertical. You know, if you play rugby, there's a lot of horizontal, or if you're diving, you're upside down, but you still got to focus on the faces. And even downhill skiing, people wear helmets and goggles, but you've got to lock on to the head, because as a human, when you look at the image, that's what you look at, the head. Even though the head might be covered, that's still our instinct, is to look at that. Well, something like downhill skiing, it's nice and easy to look at that big number on their shirt, you know, black and white. And that's what a computer would do. And it's teaching the camera not to think like a computer and think more like a human and identify birds and animals, humans, etc. That really is what these guys are talking about. This is the AF system. That's kind of at the heart of it. And that's all kind of contained within this DigicX processor.
Yeah. Well, this system just sounds so incredibly advanced. And there's just so much technology in it to get it all.
Just to kind of add to Robert's thing, I got the prototype, and the Japanese engineers handed it to us, and we were outside, and we were going, oh wow, got to try the animal AF. And the first animal we saw was like a black crow with black eyes. Yeah. And you just pointed at it, and it locked onto the eye, and you thought, wow, these guys are going to love this. This is the prototype. This is the early version. It's doing this amazing thing now. Wait till it's finished. Wait till it's going to blow their minds.
Yeah. So that was that game-changing moment for you.
Yeah. Again, as Canon staff, you pick something up and you go, this is going to change. Yeah. This is going to. We talk to the ambassadors and photographers all the time, and you kind of know what they want. And then when you see this technology, and you go, oh wow, this is really going to be amazing. They're going to, so and so is going to love this. Or sometimes you can actually pinpoint certain photographers or ambassadors and go, this is a feature for Ulla. Others are going to like this one. Proof rain covering or something like that,
So Robert, let's talk about your experience with wildlife. Tell us why you think this camera is such a game changer.
Yeah, because that's why I have my big baby over here. This is my 1DX Mark III with a 200 to 400, and it's quite a couple of kilos, Yeah. With this one all day is kind of tiring, and now it's so much smaller, and it's really like, come on, I'm not going to use my 1DX anymore. This is bad. She's going to hate me because it's so much smaller. The little body, it feels just perfectly. And even I tested it with a 100 to 500 lens, and it's just the perfect wildlife combo for me. I could film while using the electronic viewfinder, so this keeps it very, very stable. So even with a 500 millimeter lens, you keep it absolutely stable. You can film like super fast sea eagles going for a fish catch. And for me, I honestly think this is going to be a game changer because it's easy, it's light, it's super fast, 20 frames per second. I mean, what do you want more? 4K, 120 frames per second. And it looks so amazing. I was shooting gulls in the rain and herons coming in quite fast. And with 4K, 120 frames per second, this is everything I basically need. No more questions. So this is
sold.
And what about the other guys? Why, tell us why you think this camera is such a game changer.
Can I answer?
Yeah, dive in.
Because before you needed so many different cameras to do the job. A high resolution camera, a camera for speed, a camera for filming, and now it's all in this one compact package. And, I got so much more creative by using this camera because it offers so many new opportunities. As an action adventure photographer, I'm not usually the one shooting wildlife, but with this camera, it's so much fun. So for me, using this camera, photography becomes so much more fun. I mean, I already have a lot of fun taking pictures, but with this one, it's even more. If you want, you can get in all the details and all the settings. You can make whatever you want with this camera. Maybe not cooking eggs or something, but everything photography-wise, it's possible. But also, if you don't want to look at the settings, if you just want to use the camera and have fun, it's all there. So it's a camera not only for professionals, but also for amateurs who want to take great pictures and who want to have a lot of fun taking them.
That is cool. Well, I agree 100%. And let me add one more thing, because I don't know if the Canon guys know that, but I'm an underwater photographer. I usually put a housing surrounding my camera, but I didn't with this one. And I photographed in the heaviest rain I've ever experienced for hours. The camera got completely soaked and it was still working. So I can totally say it's 100% waterproof from heavy rains and stormy weather. That was very astonishing to me. So perfect expedition camera for hard conditions. It was absolutely well made.
Wow. Yeah. Ivan, do you have anything to add?
I wanted to add that when I was shooting the landscape video, the autofocus worked also on horses, on cows, on every animal I met. So I was really impressed because it can recognize the eyes of almost every animal. Also a pig. So it works very, very good.
I love it. Your experiences are, I'm sure, getting a lot of people kind of salivating at the mouth at the mere thought of being able to get their hands on this camera. Mike, I've got a question for you, a specific question about autofocus. And before I dive into that question, actually, I just want to let you guys know who are watching this live stream. We're trying to answer as many questions as we can. We've got a lot coming in, so bear with us. Understandably, we're not going to be able to answer them all, but we will try our best. So Mike, this one's for you, all about autofocus. Is the deep learning autofocus part of the Digit X or a separate neural processing unit? Sorry, I can't read.
Yeah, it's actually part of the Digit X processing kind of system itself. It's in the processor, so it's actually an algorithm inside. It's not learning. I think people hear the word deep learning and think it's learning as it goes. It's actually been programmed using a system called deep learning. So it doesn't learn anymore. It's been pre-developed, and then the algorithm is then loaded into the Digit X itself. So it's not a separate AI system. We've used AI to create how the algorithm, how it detects subject, and put it in the Digit X processor in the camera, which is why this sort of technology can only go into certain products. It can't be put into other products. It's quite specific to a processor that can hold that data.
Yeah, I think it's really important to explain that it's not actually deep learning. It is this algorithm that's kind of going to work in the camera. Robert, I've got another question for you. I know we've talked a lot about the fact that you're doing a lot of wildlife photography and things like that, but going back to the autofocus capabilities, can you tell us just why this feature or this type of feature is so important to your line of work?
Yeah, because sometimes wildlife or the shot you are aiming for is happening within not even a second. It's maybe half of a second, and you need to get the shot done. With the sea eagles, for example, you have 2 or 3 chances to take this image a day. That means 1.5 seconds in total to get the shot done, because they come just 3 times to catch a fish, and that's it for the whole day. And if you miss that shot, you're not going to get paid by Canon.
Let's talk about shooting video. I think it's something this is a really, important feature on the R5. You've been using it to shoot a lot of video, understandably. Can you tell us what you've been doing and some of the video features you're particularly impressed with? Ivan, if you could answer that, my lovely.
Oh, it was for me, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't say.
Okay. I was really impressed by this camera because I come from painting, so I always search for something that reminds me the paintbrush. So something little and that you can grab easily, light, and that can produce beauty. Mm-hmm. So with this camera, I was able to produce very good-looking images with a small body, so no compromises in terms of image quality. And the 8K really impressed me because it's not like only digital details. The details are alive, makes you feel inside of the scene. You can really recall the feelings you had while shooting. It's really amazing. And the 8K, it's not only useful to see all the details, but also when you edit them in a 4K timeline. In this case, you are able to reframe, so crop the image, make some zoom, or camera movements like pans or tilts. And within one shot, you can do a lot of things. It's not like you shoot with no care at all and you say, let's fix it in post. No, I think that you can say, let's explore the shot in post-production, because you really have a lot of new opportunities that you can follow or not. But being able to have the ability to reconsider some choices is really priceless. And the 8K let me do a lot of more things.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go on.
if you don't need the 8K, but you want the extra details that the 8K can give you, there is a very smart option. There is the 4K HQ mode. There is an 8K image, but downscaled internally in 4K. So the files weights the same as standard 4K files, but you cannot imagine, if you don't see it, how many details it has.
Yeah, so we're talking about so many opportunities post-production as well, you know. So when you are shooting, like we were saying earlier, you can focus your attention on the subject at hand rather than thinking of so many different things. Then you can play around with it after.
Yes. For example, for the yoga video, there was bad weather, so I had the chance to shot only one master shot of a series of asanas that are the yoga positions. And with that master, thanks to the full frame sensor that has a shallow depth of field, I could create a new framing of the same shot. But you have the illusion that I used a tele-lens because the background is out of focus. So really, you cannot imagine how many things you can do in post-productions, because our job is based on creativity. And sometimes creativity arrives not when you're shooting, but also in the post-production room. So being able to follow this inspiration is really, really impressive.
Yeah. And Mike, I've got a question for you. Why does the R5 not do 120 frames per second or more in 1080p?
Well, the camera and the engineers were looking at, they've really focused on the higher resolution and obviously adding the 4K 120. But having worked with these ambassadors and lots of feedback from the early samples, there's lots of lists of things that the engineers are now looking at based on kind of users' feedback to see if we can add onto these sort of specifications. So the camera's already, before we've even launched it, already kind of looking at how we can improve it.
Yeah. And what about you guys? Have you, Ulla and Robert, have you been using the video capabilities?
I took the camera in the paraglider. I was paragliding and filming at the same time. So it's not a lot of time in the air. So I was filming in 8K and I took the frames out of it. And the pictures, they're really great. You can still see the detail. They have it works. So I can actually explore the possibility of filming at the same time, then taking also pictures. And this offers so many more opportunities.
I think that really raises the bar, doesn't it? Being able to pull those 35 megapixel stills out of an 8K video. I mean, that's just incredible, isn't it?
It definitely is.
Yeah. Got anything to add, Robert?
Yes, I really like the 4K 120 frames per second. This is for fast action birds, moving bears and everything. So I'm really looking forward to the future, because I'm doing a lot of expeditions in the future and I'm going to take this camera and produce awesome footage with it. I'm pretty sure, because it's very capable. And I agree with Ivan on the opportunities you have in the post-production. It's just insane with 8K video. It looks amazing.
Yeah.
Really. And I really like your approach, Ivan. I completely agree. Fantastic.
I also have at one point. Yeah, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, if I film and photograph so much, it will consume a lot of battery. But I was actually really surprised how little it takes for such a big job.
Wow, battery is so important when you're far away from an electrical socket, isn't it? That's good. That's good to know.
And not just battery, and speaking of the amount of data you create with 4K and 8K video, but with the CF Express cards, for example, I was downloading it to my computer, 100 gigabyte goes into the computer under a minute. That means a terabyte under 10 minutes. So this made my workflow insanely fast. I was shooting yesterday and I had to get 1.7 terabytes from my camera guys. It took 15 minutes. This is crazy.
Wow, next level. And Mike, why is it not possible to shoot 4K in RAW?
Oh, well, the Canon RAW, the CRM files they're sort of not bayed. They're sort of, they're still pictures made of red, green and blue dots. And we don't normally you have to kind of rearrange them, debayer them to make a picture. And our RAW files, we don't do that. The data is kind of left unprocessed. And to convert an 8K signal down to 4K, that's a lot of processing in that bayering. You have to bayer it and then almost unbayer it to make a RAW. So it would actually not be kind of worthwhile in the sort of product at the current stage with our sort of file format.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That makes sense. And got another technical question for you just before we wrap things up. Now, there's been a lot of questions about 4K HQ. Ivan talked about it briefly. Yep. Can you tell us a bit more about what makes it so good?
Well, back to the bayering again. Again, a standard sensor has those red, green, and blue sort of pixels that make up the signal, and you don't have equal number across a frame. So when you create a picture, you're actually missing some red and blue data. And then you have to interpolate that data back to kind of create the full resolution image. So therefore, there's data missing. So there's noise and you get artifacts because that data is not quite there. You have to make it up. But with 8K and the 4K HQ is we start off with 8K. And when you downsample it, you have 4K red channel, 4K blue channel, and 4K green channel. So therefore, you've got no missing data. And when you put the image together, you get a much sharper image, a lot more detail, a lot less noise, less artifacts. So it's basically producing the perfect kind of 4K resolution. It's kind of aiming towards that kind of maximum performance for 4K. And that's why 4K users will love that format. Even though they don't need 8K, if you shoot 4K, the ability to shoot 8K has enabled them to do more with their 4K footage.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to definitely be taking advantage of both of those shooting scenarios. So we're going to wrap up this session. We are coming to the end. I've got another quick question for you, though. Why doesn't the R5 have as good low light as the R6?
Pixel size, simple as that. 20 megapixels versus 45. Always the bigger the size of the pixel, the more light it can accept. A bit like a bucket, so therefore it absorbs more light. And therefore it can do lower light because there's less background noise within the processor and the signal, and therefore gets a cleaner signal and can focus down lower light.
Yeah. And is the autofocus system and eye autofocus the same as the R5 and R6?
Yes. Again, both cameras use the same Digic-X processor that we talked about before, so the AF performance is almost identical. That's one of the two things that are kind of identical across these two products. There's the image stabilization and the focusing and the frame rates, and they are for stills. Those three technologies are across both products, and they're identical.
Mm-hmm. And do both cameras have 24p?
Good question. The R5 does in all the usual modes, and the R6 has it in some modes because it's limited. The R6 is more consumer sort of product, so we kind of haven't put it in all the sort of operations. What the R5 has it in, 8K, 4K, all the kind of places you expect it to have it as well. Because it's aimed at 4K, 24p is really a sort of cinematic kind of frame rate.
These are really brilliant questions, guys. Thank you. So keep them coming. Do the EF lenses work with the in-body image stabilization system?
Oh, image stabilization, that's a big kind of question, but the answer is simply yes. You get that's the simple answer, but there is a lot more detail to that, to be honest. Maybe we'll pick that up a bit more in the R6 as well.
Okay, and you've got 1 minute, Mike. One minute to tell us your top 10 EOS R5 features. Go.
Well, where do I go? So without talking about the big K ones, one of my favorite things is the how quiet the shutter is. This is the mechanical shutter. He says, trying to focus. Can you hear that? That's the mechanical shutter. Mm-hmm. So if that's pretty quiet, so when you want to, you can go to totally silent as well. Other cool features that you have are the fact that you can now record video to one card and still to another. You can also prioritize the card. So if you do take one card out and you put it back in again, it goes back to that card. In the old cameras, it would still stay on the old card. I love the fact that if those people come from an SLR, you can turn off the replay on the back in the viewfinder. So with an SLR, you wouldn't expect to see replay in the viewfinder, and you'd always chimp, as they say, kind of look at the image on the back of the camera. So you can set up this camera to mimic that operation, which is how a lot of people use their cameras, because seeing it inside the viewfinder it doesn't agree with everyone. It agrees with some people. Trying to think what else. There's so many little kind of operational features. The customizability, that's one of my favorites, is you have all the rings. And one of my favorite functions is the fact that now I can have shutter speed up here, sort of aperture here, and ISO here. And with the lens, I can actually change the AF mode. So I go from single point to kind of face tracking, and I can just do that with a single click. I can deactivate all my other AF modes, so I only have 2. And of course, the little joystick here. Anyone who's been using the touch and drag of the EOS R, love the speed of that. But obviously the joystick's never quite as fast. Now you can actually change the speed of this. So moving around is super, super fast just by using this joystick. It's kind of, the level of customizability is really improved on this camera. So there's so many small customizable details that really takes the camera to a different level for each individual user.
Yeah. And it's those little things, isn't it, that really makes the difference to usability, isn't it?
Yeah. And every photographer is different. They want to use it in different ways, and they're always saying, "Oh, it would be good if this button did this or this button did that." And we're moving towards that, making that possible, and adding all these kind of functionalities. Another great feature is that we have this new grip, which is the WFT R10, and it fits on. It's got Wi-Fi boosters inside and an Ethernet port. But the cool thing is, if you're kind of using it alongside your 1DX Mark III for exports, you can actually copy your network settings from your 1DX3 to your EOS R5 and vice versa. Yeah. So you don't have to reset each camera. We're making the cameras interchangeable and work together in a sort of easier way. And you can even trigger different cameras. You can actually trigger a 1DX Mark III with this camera wirelessly. So you can actually create a kind of like a wildlife shoot. You can have one by the Badger's net set and the long lens over here, and you can trigger them both using the inbuilt Wi-Fi technology.
Wow. So we're really talking next level capabilities in a camera that can just do so much.
Yeah, the trouble is it does too much, and to cram it all into half an hour is going to be very tricky.
Yeah, it has been hard. But we've covered the core features of this camera. There's obviously a lot more to know. You guys can check out the keynote. You can check out all the information online. It's all there now because, like I said, as you know, it's live. We can talk about it. The products are no longer a secret. And the R5 is just... I'm seriously impressed. Impressive image stabilization, the highest resolution video recording of any EOS camera, the ability to shoot both stills and video, and they pull out those 35 megapixel frames. I think it's something that so many people are just going to take advantage of. And there's just so many creative options from what can only be described as a multifaceted machine. And all these features are crammed into a camera that's really compact. The body is nice and compact. And in fact, Mike, you actually told me this story. Canon's gone from an 8K camera that needed 4 external recorders to capture video. This is something you demoed at an expo like 5 years ago. So in 5 years, you've gone from that to something as small as this.
But that size, yeah.
It's just absolutely incredible. And that takes us to the end of our R5 session. I'd like to say a big thank you to our panelists for joining us, Ivan, Robert and Ulla, and of course to Mike, and to you guys, our audience, for submitting questions. As you can probably tell, there's so much to talk about. Like I said earlier, we unfortunately didn't have time to answer everyone's questions, so all I can do is apologise. But if you've not heard your question, a Q&A will be uploaded or published onto the Canon blog tomorrow. So make sure you check that out. There'll be more information to grab from there. Next up, we are going to be diving into the EOS R6. Now I'm joined by Canon expert Mike again. Mike's going to stick around for the R6. You spent a lot of time with that camera, as you have with the R5. So we're going to pick your brain about a camera that's, I guess, best described perfect for enthusiasts and professionals moving to mirrorless, and people who are looking for greater capabilities from a multi-purpose product, and one that really, really excels when the lights go down. When it's after dark, you can take some really amazing photos. Like the R5, you're looking at impressive in-body image stabilization, as well as stunning 4K video and impressive slow motion capabilities. Now, before we delve into the intricacies of the R6, we're going to play a VT. filmmaker who often finds himself on the front line of very extreme shooting environments. We do have a late addition, Javier Cortez, a portrait and fashion photographer and award-winning cinematographer and director. So welcome, guys. Hello, thanks for joining us. And just a note to the audience, don't forget, if you have a question, don't be shy, submit your questions and we will hopefully be able to read them out while we go through the live stream. So just to kick off, let's talk about the top line specs of the R6. So Mike, can you kick off by telling us what are the top line features of the R6?
Yeah, so the R6, obviously the sister or brother, depending on your point of view, of the R5, 20 megapixels. So the sensor is taken from the 1DX Mark III. It's a very custom variation of that sensor. But what we've been able to do on that one is now do 4K, 60p, and AF. So it's got amazing AF down to minus 6.5 EV. So lower than the R5, and also much higher ISO capabilities as well. Was it 102,400? It's also got the same IS system, so it's 8 stops IS, depending on the lens, of course, and that's with obviously the Sony 24 105. But amazingly, you can also get 8 stops with something, a beast of that size, like the 28 to 70 f2. You can still do 8 stops, even though this lens doesn't have any IS built in. This body can do all that. It's got 2 dual card slots, 2 UHS 2 cards. So, and again, like the R5, you can record to both cards as well, etc. So 20 frames a second, and the same shutter mechanism as we had in the R5. So 12 frames a second, again with full AF, a full resolution, or you can also shoot 20 frames a second, again with full AF tracking. Has the same DigitX processor, so all the AF functionalities that Robert talked about before for animals are in here, and Richard will tell you more about how great it is for sports photography as well.
Yeah. So Ilvi, I've got a question for you. You've been using the EOS R6 to capture family portraits. How have you found the camera's ability to focus in low light?
It was really an amazing experience using the camera. So what I did, I went to a farm where I photographed a family who lives at that farm with 3 generations. And the youngest girl is 1 year old, and the grandfather also living at the farm is in his 90s. And I used the camera all around the farm. And for low light, I used it actually to take portraits in the stable, which didn't have any lighting. It had a little window where there was light coming through, and that was it. And I barely could see the person standing in front of me, but through the viewfinder, I could see everything. It was perfect. And it was such a crazy experience to not be able to see something, and then the camera kind of helping me to see.
Yeah.
And it captured a super sharp image. And I just couldn't believe it when I saw the result when I was looking at the camera.
And that is quite incredible, isn't it? A camera that can pick up images in the dark, and your human eye can't see a thing.
Yeah, and the nice thing as well was the autofocus on the eye that it locked, because I couldn't really see anything myself. I could see the focus locking onto the eye and staying there.
Yeah.
So I think that was the one thing that I was amazed by most, because the young girls at the farm, they were running around, they were jumping on the trampoline, and it would just lock and stay on like a magnet, and everything is in focus. I've never seen that ever.
Wow. And I guess it just makes your life so much easier, because it's not the easiest subjects to shoot, children who are running around and just being crazy. So a camera that ultimately complements what you do is just, I guess, really game-changing for you.
Yeah, definitely. There was one specific moment which I don't think I would have been able to capture with any other camera. Probably with the R5. but what was so amazing, it was the father was pushing the youngest girl on a swing, and then the swing turned. So all the ropes kind of twisted. And even though that was twisting in front of my camera, it still locked onto the father's eyes, who was standing in the background pushing.
Wow.
And all the frames are in focus. It was just crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. I can tell by the sound of your voice that you were genuinely impressed and shocked.
I am
with the results. Amazing. Mike, I've got a question for you. Can you tell us about the in-camera image stabilization? You know, this is a really big deal for Canon. So let's dive into that.
Yeah, so the sort of in-body stabilization has sort of been designed by Canon. It's a whole Canon system. And we went back to the drawing board, and what we, as Canon, have been the leaders of the optical stabilization for years. What we understand is that the different types of systems in a body and in a lens, they both are better at certain types of focal lengths and vibrations. And what we designed is a system that would then prioritize the type of vibrations depending on the lens and what was going on. So that's why we can achieve this amazing ability to get this 8 stops. But obviously, one of the big things about the system is the large mount. That's probably one of the key elements in the whole system. Forget the moving sensor, but the mount makes a lot of what is possible, because it's so large. We get a very large image circle, so therefore the system can move more than it could with a small amount. And that's why we can get, I think I said it before, keep lifting this up, is that 8 stops with a lens like this, or the 85 1.2. But also the lens mount also has super high speed communication, so therefore we can kind of partner these two IS systems together and make them work in tangent. So therefore the system also, crazy kind of things, it takes into consideration the rotation of the earth. So as the world moves, there's slight movements in that way. And when you breathe, you vibrate, or your heart causes vibration. And these are all things it's taken into consideration to stabilize. And that's why we can get 8 stops. I've been able to handhold this down to 4 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to put, tripod manufacturers out of business, perhaps, but it's amazing. But also the fact that, I think Javier all kind of can talk about this more, but he used it for video, and he did an amazing video where he put 2 cameras on a rig and shot them side by side. And it really showed how good it is for video. And I won't steal his thunder. I'll let him talk about that.
Well, like you said, it is so easy to move. And I think when you don't have really good image stabilization, you don't really realize how much your breathing affects taking pictures and things like that. So having this next level image stabilization is just going to completely open up the possibilities to so many different types of
and again, it's so complex. The whole thing is quite complex. So you will still get an improvement in performance with your EF lenses as well. But the way the standard that we have, everyone measures on, basically only takes into consideration certain things. So we won't see any number increase for your EF lens if it's IS. It would be exact on paper. It would still be the same figure, but in real world, you'll see a big difference. I've kind of tested it with some lenses that you can really notice, a stop, 2 stops better than what the quoted figure would be according to the official CEPA standards. That's where we're benefiting. We're looking at those vibrations and movements that aren't really kind of normally measured in those sort of systems. But our real world, massive improvements.
Yeah, I bet so many people can't wait to put that through its paces. And Wanda, I've got a question for you. So you've been using this camera to photograph a ballet dancer in Italy. The images are amazing, but what was it like to be able to handhold 4-second exposure?
So it was actually quite shocking. As Mike just said, it just allows you to take much longer exposure shots than what you would normally do without a tripod. And normally, so I'm a fashion photographer, so usually I work with models, and I usually have very painterly inspiration, and the poses I use on my images are usually quite still. And now, as you said, we were working with a dancer, actually 2 dancers, because Javier was with me. He was working with a female dancer, and I was working with a male dancer. And it was a challenge for me and for the R6, because basically I wanted to capture the beauty, the dynamism, and the fluidity of the dancer's movement. And I really wanted to capture one particular picture when you have his blurred movement, him dancing in a long exposure shot, and you still have the backdrop sharp. And I was told, you can handhold the camera for 2 seconds, and I was not sure about it if I could do it, not because of the camera, just because of my shaky hands or something.
Yeah.
And I managed to handhold the camera for 4 seconds.
I remember.
Wow. So that was one of those jaw-dropping moments for you, huh?
Exactly. I was like, okay, so maybe actually, yeah, I do need this camera.
What about you, Javier? Tell us about your experiences.
For me, it was a total challenge. At the beginning, I didn't thought that was so amazing, and the IS in body was crazy with the two cameras, and we tried it in the theater, we tried it in the whole locations, and working with the two cameras and trying to be a stabilizer, like you have, I don't know, a big stabilizer, and you only have the camera and the lens, and it was crazy, totally crazy, because I'm always trying to be soft and smooth, and then you got it, and it was challenging, but perfect.
Yeah.
And the low light, well, I think we are going to talk about it later, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, we are. Ilvi and Richard, I just want to come to you. Do you have anything to add about your experiences with the in-body image stabilization?
Yeah, for me, when the dancers were dancing around and I walking with them, because I'm trying to follow all the steps they done, is how I find the right position on the shoot, and I can be changing, and they were improving, and they made it. And with the camera, I found the perfect place, the perfect shot. So it's amazing. I love the camera.
The perfect little work companion for you.
Yeah, we have a tripod. I hate the tripod. So.
Oh, me too. What about you, Ilvi?
Yeah, I think the same goes for me. I work a lot abroad. So for me, carrying around too much things, it's, the smaller the better, or the less the better. So I guess now I wouldn't even have to take a tripod, probably. Like literally I wouldn't. I was really shocked by how low you could actually hand hold. It was, especially in the darker situation in that stable that I was talking about. It was a moment. It's too bad my face wasn't recorded when I was chimping, because I was actually chimping. I was looking at my screen, and when I was zooming in and it was still in focus, I don't remember exactly how many seconds I held it, but the fact that it was in focus was crazy to me.
Yeah. And what about you, Richard?
I think to me, it's especially about when you shoot video, because if you take the R6 and, for example, at 24-105, you can run and gun. You don't need anything. You don't need a gimbal or something. You just take it and go and shoot video. And especially when you want to do both, when you do a hybrid, when you do stories where you shoot stills and video, it's beautiful. It's a button switch and off you go, and you still get away with some smooth images. It's just more raw, and it's just more, you're just closer to what you're doing.
Yeah. So let's talk about your kind of photography for a minute. It's all about speed and extreme sports. How did the R6 cope with the demands of shooting motorbikes that you've been testing out there?
Well, I had to find something that's fast enough to give a real test for the camera. And you mentioned it's motorbikes. Luckily enough, in my city, there's a legendary speedway racetrack. So speedway, that's motorbikes going 90 to 120 kilometers per hour, and then they drift in the corners. So really, really fast. And, this is the perfect test for the new autofocus system. My colleagues and you talked a lot about the eye tracking, but in my case, the problem was they wear helmets, so you couldn't see the eyes. Helmets and goggles, and there were no eyes. So I'm like, how should that eye tracking work in this moment? But, that's the beauty of this new autofocus system and about the deep learning, is the camera understands that this is a helmet and this is what I need to focus on. So picture me laying there on the ground, first motorbike comes around the corner, fire the camera, and then I look at the back of the screen, and there's just every single image is sharp. When you put these 6,072 AF sensors to work, it just blows your socks off. It's like 40, 50, 60 images in a row, and they're all sharp, and you just pick the best one you like.
I think that's a real testament to the capabilities of this camera, the fact that you said every single image was sharp. While it sounds like you nearly lost your life, by the way.
Well, that's a different story. But you know, the beauty is that, you know, I have no idea about shooting speedway. It was first time over this track. But of course, you have the pressure to deliver the goods. So, you know, this extra help from the camera is just perfect. You know, it makes your life much easier. And, you know, what I would like to highlight with R6 is similar to R5. It's not just one feature that's so important. It's the combination of the features that makes it so powerful. So the combination of this incredible AF system together with the frame rate. I mean, 20 frames per second, that's like the big boy in the house. It's like the 1DX Mark III, and that's a very big, heavy, expensive camera. And now you get the same frame rate in this small, light, and affordable body. So I think that's really, in combination with the AF, that's where the magic is.
Yeah. And talking of AF, Mike, I've got a question for you. Does the AF system also track objects like cars, planes, and, you know, motorbikes?
Well, it doesn't identify them, and it will track them. It will track any object that you place an AF point onto, but it doesn't automatically detect them. The human, the face, and the animals are geared to be, if there are multiple objects in the frame, that it will lock onto a person. If you have a wardrobe and a person, it will go to the person. But if there's no person there, then it would maybe lock onto the wardrobe, and it would do that. So that's what it's been taught to do, is to recognize cats, dogs, birds, and humans. And if it sees, you choose which is the priority. So animal AF will still recognize humans. If there's no birds, dogs, or cats, it will lock onto the person. Because that's next down the priority of list, and then it will lock onto the object that's in the frame nearest the AF point. So that's right, but there is no sort of animal, no aircraft or kind of vehicle option. It just sees it as a general option.
Yeah, and the system is obviously clever enough to do its thing when it's not doing something specific.
No, it's not one of its programmed kind of objects to recognize. It doesn't identify those. Well, not yet. Hopefully one day.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, so we're seeing a lot of comments about the dynamic range of the EOS R6. Can you explain that in a bit more detail?
So the dynamic range of the R6, so it has the same sort of family processor as the 1DX Mark III. So the dynamic range of this will be almost identical, very similar to that already tested on the market. So obviously, was it DP Review, Photons to Photos, and DxO have all kind of rated it and given it quite a good, I think, 14 stops, kind of 14 and a half stops worth of dynamic range. So it's it's pretty damn good for its kind of class of camera and ISO performance, etc.
Yeah, and let's talk video for a sec. I know we touched on it previously. Can you just tell us about the R6's video capabilities?
Yeah, so the R6 is aimed, obviously, the R5 was aimed at professionals, and these video specifications are, high end. This is really aimed at, the everyday sort of photographer, people who do it as a passionate hobby, and video is maybe they're not doing professionally, so it's more for themselves. So therefore, the specifications reflect that. So you don't need RAW, etc. So we shoot because the 1DX Mark III again was a professional camera. It had a 4K DCI format, which is a very wide frame cinema format. But for this camera, UHD, which is the standard 16:9 ratio that you have on your home televisions. So that was going to be the more important format. So that's what we've done. So there's a slight crop because the sensor has a readout designed to produce the oversampled image, because we've used the same sensor, the readout is slightly cropped, but it still gives you a 5.1 oversampled 4K image at 4K 60p, and with AF as well, which wasn't possible with the 1DX Mark III.
Yeah. And guys, ambassadors, how have you found the video shooting experience?
I think, well, who is going to talk?
You.
Okay. For me, it was a great surprise. I think you can, I know maybe it's not the biggest one, as Mike told, but I think you can compare with the Cinema EOS cameras. For me, I think the color, I try to push the limits of the camera all the time where we were shooting. And I try with all the programs of color in the shadows, in the lights, and it's amazing. I think the the capabilities of the color, you can grade in and you can do everything to have a perfect ending shot. So for me, it's really good. And the other thing is something we all try to find, the perfect quality and this high-end quality video. And maybe somebody that is professional think this is not for me, but I think you can achieve great results with this camera. I don't think you need more. You need a great lens with this camera, and you can go and shoot fashion or maybe advertisement. You try. I think it's a great camera.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make about this camera. You know, it's an everyman camera. It's for people who are at the top of their game. It's for people who could just be starting out and they're curious and adventurous and want to up their game a little bit more. There is just the possibilities of the features are just so endless.
Take the camera and go out and shoot. Yeah.
What about the rest of you guys? How was your video experience?
If I can take over, it's about, you know, getting started with video, because that's always the problem for many photographers, that they're, you know, don't want to do the first step. And this camera is perfect for that. You know, if your videos end up on YouTube and people watch it on the phone, you know, HD or even on a TV is enough. And if I go back to the video that we shot about the speedway racing, one of my favorite shots is shot with 120 frames per second in HD, and you see these bikers coming flying around the corner, and you just with this one shot understand the sport, and that's just in your camera, built in. You kind of get it for free with the camera, and I just want to encourage everybody to start and shoot the first film, and what's in there is plenty. There's no more excuses why you cannot start your own video career. And then when you started, you can grow up. You know, you can go 4K, 8K, cinema, EOS, everything.
Yeah. You heard that here first. Anyone can do it. Mike, does the R6 have time code?
Yes, there is certain obviously features we've copied across from our sort of professional cameras, and the time code is one of those functionalities. The other one is obviously Canon log, which is again a great functionality for those getting to film. It really kind of allows them to kind of get the most quality out of the file to move forward into the professional areas.
And will you add all-eye recording to the R6?
Again, we will listen to customers' feedback. Again, you know, these products are new to the market, and we're listening to everybody. So at the moment, we can't commit to anything, but we are actively looking to add new functions based on customer feedback. So it would go into the pot of things to look at. If there's enough demand that people kind of feel this is something that they really like, then obviously we'll kind of push to see if it can happen.
That is actually one thing I really respect and admire about Canon, you know, constantly taking customer feedback on board, and have done so with the R5 and the R6, and, you know, taking features that people want to see in cameras and making that happen. I think that's really quite incredible. And I think the ambassadors can agree, because they were all incredibly impressed with this camera. I just got another question for you, Mike. Can the R6 shoot proxy files like the R5? And that's the end of my question.
Okay, I thought it was going to go on longer. I thought it was going to be a big, deep question. So, yes, it can, if you set to the dual cards option, there's an option to kind of record, but there's no, you can record to the R5 proxies, but the R6 you can't. It's either just to one card. There's no proxy option on this camera, sorry. So many cameras, so many things to remember.
Yeah, your mind must be like crazy at the moment.
But the trouble is, there's so much share between these products. You go, it's in both of them or it's in one of them. It's kind of getting a little bit blurred.
And can you just say a few words on overheating on both the R5 and the R6 during video recording?
Well, yeah, obviously there's no magic solution. What we've managed to do with these products is amazing, cram all the technology in, but obviously if they're used for extended periods of time, they will get hot, and the cameras will need to kind of shut down and have a little kind of cooling off period, shall we say. So obviously the R5 can kind of do 8K for about 20 minutes. It depends on the ambient temperature, to be honest, as well. Yeah. So the cooler it is, the longer it is, the hotter it is to start off with, and the shorter it will be. And again, with a very sort of high sort of the 4K 60, again, you'll get some heating with the R6. It's about half an hour, which is, you know, it's normal sort of recording time anyway.
Yeah.
Decent recording kind of periods before they kind of get too warm again. You know, anything get the 4K 120 again is limited to about 7 minutes, but that's exactly half an hour playback, because when you play back 4K 120 at 30 frames a second, for example, or 100 at 25, it's 4 times the length. So therefore, it's still half an hour recording time. The camera would probably close down anyway at that sort of recording period anyway, because of the time limit set.
Yeah. And another question that a lot of people are quite keen to know, can you do time lapse with the R6?
Time lapse, yes. So there's 2 time lapse options on both products. There's the built-in interval timer, so you can actually program the camera to take photographs over a period of time and end up with a batch of images that you can stitch together. Or there is the in-camera time-lapse movie function, where the camera takes the images and creates the movie in camera. It doesn't save the images, it just outputs either a 4K movie from the R6, or you have a choice of 4K or 8K from the R5. So you have 2 options, kind of how you want to do it, whether it does automatically everything for you, or you want to assemble it together in your preferred software.
Yeah, and it's always good to have options. And finally, Mike, tell us your top R6 features.
As I say, they're very, very similar in products. And this is, you know, there's so many nice things that go across both of them. But obviously, the R6 is slightly lighter. Again, the Wi-Fi, I kind of didn't mention it in the R5. Both have this amazing sort of Wi-Fi in our new image.canon sort of system. Very easy Bluetooth. The Bluetooth connection has been really improved. I was playing with it last night, and it took like seconds to connect to a phone. Literally sort of an amazing kind of ability to connect and then transfer the images to your phone or to your iPad. And then you can also, if you connect it to your hotspot, you can upload automatically all your images to the Canon cloud, which then goes on to Adobe or Google, etc. There's so many little features, but you know, and again, the customizability of this product is kind of, you know, on par with the R5.
Yes, I think it's a really nice option that people might be eyeing up the R5, but a lot of the features are a bit too maybe high end for them.
Yeah, again, not everyone wants those big file sizes. You know, 45 megapixels sounds amazing, but then you end up with lots of data, hard drives, etc. Well, 20 megapixels is probably, you know, more than enough for most people, and amazing AF in low light and the high ISO performance. If they're kind of, you know, if you shoot in low light conditions, this is an amazing sort of product.
Yeah. And on that note, that brings us to the end of our I can't speak. That brings us to the end of our EOS R6 session. I feel like we could keep chatting away for ages and ages, but unfortunately, we've only got this very small window. I'd like to thank Mike. Mike, you've been brilliant. Thank you.
I don't think I'm going away, am I?
No, you're not. But no. I'm just saying you've been brilliant in this session. You might not be great in the next one. So, you know, I'm only joking. So I just want to thank our ambassadors as well. Ilvi, Wanda, Richard, and who am I missing? Nobody. Javier, that's it. Like I said, I'm sure there are so many people who just cannot wait to get their hands on this camera and put it through its paces. And I'm not surprised. We're talking about a seriously impressive bit of kit with features to match, as we've just discussed. And I'm pretty sure it was a very sad moment when you guys had to give that camera back.
Yes.
I don't doubt for a second you probably tried to keep hold of the camera as well. I know I would. And just to reiterate again, if your question wasn't read out today, we are very, very sorry. There is quite a long list of questions, a lot of people waiting to have their voices heard. But there's, just to give you a reminder, there will be a Q&A roundup published on the Canon blog tomorrow. So make sure you check that out. And that brings us to the end of session 2. That also means we are at the halfway mark. And next up, we're going to be talking lenses and Canon's R system. And like Mike said, he's not going anywhere. So I'm joined once again by Mike Burnhill. I've got my trio of Canon ambassadors who I will introduce as well once we play a short VT. But just to give you a quick rundown of what was released today. In order to kind of realize a camera's full image quality potential, a high quality lens is ideal. And today Canon has lifted the lid on 4 exciting new lenses, as well as lens extenders for the RF range. And there really is something for everybody. And on that note, let's play a video.
This is the 100 to 500 millimeter zoom. It's f4.5 to 7.1, so it gives you a little bit of extra range. What's interesting to know, when you put it at 400, it's 5.6. I'm doing a panning shot right now, so the background becomes blur. It's stabilizing mode 2, that's perfect for these pans, and then you try to be as steady as possible and just cruise along with the rider.
(100 to 500), perfect wildlife range.
So Canon has completely written the rule book when it comes to functionality, lens size and capability. And to talk about them and what they can do, it's my pleasure to welcome internationally renowned bike photographer Martin Bissig and sports photographer and I can't speak today, too excited. Sports photographer and filmmaker Richard Volt is back, as is documentary photographer Ilvi Nikicin. They just can't get enough of telling you about how great this new Canon kit is. And like I said to you guys before, don't be afraid to get in touch with your questions. We will try and answer them live if we can. And then we're going to dive straight in. Okay. I've got a technical question, first of all. Can you tell us a bit about the EOS R system concept, Mike?
Well, yeah, so the EOS R concept is really the RF mount. And the RF mount was designed to open up the next generation of lens possibilities. So a very short flange back, very wide diameter, and high speed communication. These are the three kind of areas that really this has. And that really allowed the engineers making lenses basically three possibilities: to make smaller versions of existing lenses, or make better versions that did more, or create totally new concepts. And that's what we've tried to do all the way through the lens that we released. You can see that, you know, each lens is one of those kind of groups. It's either a smaller version of the existing lens, it's doing something new that wasn't possible before, or it's cramming something else extra into that same sort of lens.
Yeah. It's almost like you fine-tuned these lenses.
Well, it's more that it just rips off all the rule books that they had before. They had a certain lens did this, and you moved forward incrementally. Now we start from a clean slate of paper, and the engineers kind of almost had too much choice, and they're allowed to do all crazy lenses. I keep holding up this lens, but I'll do it again. So
yeah, keep showing it off.
This one, we need to sell more of these now. The 28 to 70 f2, again, almost impossible to do for an SLR. It would have been too big, too heavy. But suddenly, a lens like this was possible with the RF mount, and the engineers took the opportunity to kind of show what that mount opened up. And I think some of the new lenses also opened up new doors as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, now you've been shooting with the EOS R system since like around 2018. Can you tell us what you love about it, and what is your favorite lens?
Yeah, you know, when the Canon released the R system 2 years back, me as a sports and action photographer, I have to carry all my gear with me all the time. So that means if I go on mountain bike trips, or if I go to the mountains in the Himalayas or to Pakistan, I have to carry all my gear. And back then, when the EOS R was released, for me, it was clear that was going to be my camera, because it was small, it was light, and that for me was these were the key features when I made the decision, when I moved from the 1DX Mark II and the 5D Mark IV to the EOS R system. Obviously, back then, with the EOS R, there was a bit of a compromise when it came to speed, but I was willing to take that compromise. And back then, the RF mount was completely new, and there were not that many choices of lenses. But thanks to the adapter, I could use my old EF glass, and so that was the reason why I jumped on the mirrorless wagon from the beginning. And there are a couple of lenses I love. It really depends on the job I'm doing. If I do commercial work, I love the 28 to 70 2.0, as Mike pointed out. It's a great lens, and it combines a lot of fixed lenses in one zoom lens. So this is great. And when I'm going on adventure trips, when I'm going on expeditions, I brought the 24 to 240 millimeter, that super zoom with me. I know it's probably not the best lens when it comes to image quality, but it's so small and so lightweight, and it covers such a huge zoom range. So that was the point for me to go with that system.
And you've never looked back.
No, never. Especially now, you know, when I had the chance to test the 1DX Mark III before it was launched, I held it in my hands and I was like, oh damn, I wish I could have like that camera in a small body. I wish I could have that autofocus and 20 frames per second in a small body. Now fast forward 5 or 6 months and here we are. It's like Christmas for me. It's the perfect camera. So for me, I don't know what else I could ask for.
Amazing. Either that or your wishes come true. Sorry, what was that?
I was working with the R5 during the test shots.
So basically what you're telling me is when you hope for something, it comes true.
You have to hope long enough, yeah.
Okay, Mike, I've got a question for you. Can you tell us about the RF 100 to 500 millimeter? Talk us through it.
Yeah, so obviously one of our most popular lenses that we had was this one, which was the EF 100 to 400. It's been around for a long time, super popular lens. So when the engineers were kind of Canon planning, they knew that this was a key lens that they had to reproduce. And they, following those guidelines I talked about before, was like, we can make a lens which is the same size, but cram more in. And that's what they've done. They've kind of created a 100 to 400, practically the same size, about 1 centimeter taller, but it's 200 grams lighter and an extra 100 millimeters crammed into the focal length range as well. It's got dual nano USMs. It's sort of sealed. There is even a special seal down here that stops the water and dust getting in. So although there is this classic kind of air moving in and forth, air will go through because nature doesn't like a vacuum. There is a special filter in there to stop moisture and dust getting into the system as well. Very fast AF. You have the tightening ring as well, which is a classic of this type of lens. So if you're shooting up airplanes, is a classic kind of a user group for this, that the lens doesn't sink back as well. So it's a great all-round sort of travel, wildlife, and sort of action sports sort of lens.
I think we can just tell by the way you're handling it just how lightweight it is.
Yeah, it's
very
been designed and perfectly balanced for the R series cameras. It's not front heavy. It's designed, the axis of the weight is around that center point. So when the body comes on, the whole system is very portable. You know, it's all been thought about. It's not a lens designed out of place without the bodies. The body is very part of the design process for these sort of RF lenses.
Yeah, and I think that portability, like you said, is just incredibly important, not even just for people who are traveling with loads of kit, but just in a general day in the life of a shooter. It's nice to have kit that isn't going to weigh you down.
We could go back to Robert before. He was shooting on a boat, and again, you know, no tripod, he's shooting birds, and you don't want to go away because, as he said, the birds were only coming like twice a day to feed. So you've only got a few chances, and what you don't want is arm strain, and you're going, oh, I gotta lift
shaking.
Yeah, so you've kind of got to have a lens that is, usable for long periods of time as well. And that's one of the balances of this lens. That's why people love it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are going to love it. Richard, over to you. You've been using this lens on the trip that we've been talking about. Can you explain why this is a key lens to have in your kit bag?
It's this incredible range it gives you. You know, going back to the stadium, I could shoot the motorbike coming towards me and then zoom in, and then at the end I would get a detailed shot of the motorbike. And that's one of the images you saw in the video. It's my favorite shot. It just gives you this versatility. And in combination with the lightweight, it's perfect for when you go in the mountains and when you go on the water, you're just more flexible. I shoot a lot of sailing, and one of my key lenses there is a 200 to 400 with the 1.4 extender built in, but that's a big, heavy lens. Now, this lens can do almost the same. And yes, if you look at the f-stop, it's just 4.5 to 7.1. That's not so sexy. But in combination with the new cameras, the sensors, when you use an R6 and an R5 and you shoot it at 400 ISO or 800, you almost see no difference. So you don't have to be scared to shoot high ISO numbers, and then you can benefit from all these new features the lens can give you.
Yeah, so the range of possibilities have just gone up for you, basically.
Yeah, and more range just means more pictures, so you come up with a couple better shots.
which is what ultimately what you want, isn't
that's
it?
what you get paid for, you know. If you're professional and if you're an enthusiast, you know, that's what you live for. Because, you know, when you shoot out in the nature and, you know, something comes popping up, you're just there, you know, this extra 100 millimeter that gives you just more reach, and that's perfect. There's nothing wrong with more reach.
It really is quite incredible, isn't it? How
yeah,
pretty much just building on the smaller lens, and it's almost the same size, but it's lighter, more capabilities.
Yeah.
It's really impressive how Canon's moved that forward.
Yeah, and with 500 millimeter, you're in the super telephoto range. You know, you can get really close.
Yeah. So let's move on to the 600 millimeter f11 and the 800 millimeter f11 lenses. What is the development concept behind these lenses, Mike?
Well, you know, these type of lenses, an 800 mil is nearly 5 kilos. It's kind of retails for the price of a nice car. And these are specialist lenses for, you know, professionals or very passionate people. It kind of cuts off a lot of people who would like a type of lens like that. It's just not affordable. Or the options that kind of mimicked it had lots of kind of, you know, the AF was terrible, etc. And what we've tried to do is produce lenses which, again, break the barriers. So these sort of lenses, this is 960 grams for approximately, you know, retail price would be under €1,000. It's, you know, it's super compact. It's actually smaller than this lens. It's probably the same size as a 70-200 EF version, which most people have. So this can live in your bag, the same as your 70-200, and means you've got 600 wherever you go. You know, where I live, there's a wild park, and I was walking through with my, you know, my wife and children, and then a deer popped out. We see deers, and then we walked further, and there were kites, and it was like so much wildlife. And you're going, if only I had a telephoto lens with me. And something like this means that, yeah, I've got no excuse now. This kind of lens could go easily in a bag, and suddenly I can, when the action happens, I've got that long lens. Or taking a 600 f4 with me on a walk with the kids is not really practical. You know, these lenses kind of, you know, break what the rules of what a telephoto lens can be. And again, it's all thanks to the deer optics and the redesigning the sort of this extending mechanism. And now with the fact with the AF systems that we've improved with the EOS R, the dual pixel AF2, that we can focus down to these smaller apertures. You know, upgrading of the STM, so you get super fast. I was shooting some kites with this, you know, just the weekend, and it still locked on and followed these kites as they kind of dived around.
Wow.
You know, it's for such a, you know, cheap lens. So the performance was kind of incredible. You know, I was blown away, you know, by what this sort of lens can actually do. You know?
Well, like you just said, you know, it's redefining the capabilities of what a lens can do. It's amazing. It's astounding.
No, 600 mil doesn't have to be expensive anymore. You kind of break the rules, and that's what part of the RF mount's about, is changing the game and changing what the rules of lens design is, and what, you know, is about affordable and what's not affordable, and making photographic capabilities much easier for a wider range of users.
Yeah. And as f11 lenses, are these really useful for real world shoots?
Yeah, as I said, I was using it at the weekend. You know, it was a bit drizzly, grey skies. I was still able to shoot no problem at all at 2000 a second, f11. And the ISO performance, you know, of these cameras have all been increased. So the drop in the aperture has been compensated by the improvement in the ISO performance. So if we went back a year ago, then you might say, well, maybe it's not, you know, the lens needs to be f8, but these have all improved by a stop or 2 stops. So that kind of benchmark has all been elevated with ISO performance. So therefore, the slower the aperture, it becomes less of an issue. You still get amazing performance.
Yeah. So these lenses can be used with the extenders.
Yes.
Is autofocus still possible, and what lenses are compatible?
So the extenders are still fully compatible with the 3 new lenses we just talked about, the 600, the 800, and
need a third arm.
The 500. And they will work, and the AF system has been designed to work with these. In fact, when you put the extender on these sort of new DO lenses, the actual area doesn't even reduce in size. It stays exactly the same with the R5 and R6. With the EOS R, it's obviously still fully compatible, but you'll get a slightly smaller area when you use with these. But it's still you go back to the DSLR days, Richard could probably back me up. If you put an extender on, you were lucky to get one AF point in the center when you use very long lenses with a 2x extender. But here, you're getting hundreds of AF points covering a large area, which is probably the same as an SLR with an 1600 mil lens. So telephoto photography is really going to be blown away what you can actually start to do with these long lenses.
Yeah, it really, really sounds like it. The creative opportunities seem there's going to be plentiful by the sounds of things.
Yeah, and Canon's job is to create the tools, and it's for like our ambassadors and our customers to create those creative opportunities, and we would just provide the instruments that make that sort of these opportunities possible.
Yeah. So that's the 600 and the 800. Now let's move on to the 85mm f2 macro. Ilvi, you've been using this lens, haven't you? So you've been testing out this portrait lens. Can you tell us how you got on with it and what features you particularly liked? What standout features really spoke out to you?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, I was photographing at a farm where 3 generations were living. So it was a huge family, actually. So there's the grandparents, the parents, the 2 young daughters, but then the father also has children from another marriage. So it was a long portrait shoot because I walked all around the farm with them, had to portray them all. So it was quite a long day. So I would say the first thing that I really, really liked about the lens is that it's lightweight. It was great at the farm because it was a long day, but I can also imagine when I'm traveling, it's an easy lens to just take with you because it's not as heavy as I thought it would be. And it's also nice to hold it. It's not a big lens. It's quite, I don't know how much it weighs or how big it is, but it just feels quite small and you can easily take it with you. And then when I was taking the portraits, I put everybody in a different setting. So some of the, like the grandparents, I put them in the field, and one of the daughters, I put her in front of the barn. And what I really liked is that even though it was a series of photos with different kind of backgrounds, the fact that the backgrounds had, all of them had this nice soft touch to it.
Yeah.
So it made it kind of look like it was a series of portraits. It really made it connect to each other because the softness basically made it into one like beautiful looking shoot. Yeah,
it really brings your photography to life.
Exactly. Yes. And well, there's also another feature which I thought I wouldn't be using at all, even though Canon asked me to use it, which was the macro setting. But because I'm mainly a documentary photographer, I thought I wouldn't really need it. And I was totally mistaken because I used the macro so much. I used it almost half of the day. I was focusing on little details. And it made it actually, it made me look at photography in a total different way. I'm not a macro photographer, but to see the world so big, like these little details so big. And also now when I'm making a series out of this family at the farm, I feel the macro shots really add to the story and to the series. I love it actually.
But I love how the fact that you're using this lens, and like you said, you weren't really a macro shooter, but it completely opened your eyes to a whole new type of shooting, and you're getting these amazing images from it as well. So this is how I presume you're going to be moving forward using shooting macro as well as the portrait shots that you do.
Yeah, exactly. It was funny because there were also animals at the farm. There were some sheep, and I took, like usually I would just take a portrait of the sheep, and now I focused at the eye and took a macro shot, and actually the picture is so amazing because it looks like the eye, you can almost see through, like, I don't know, I can't explain, but there's a depth in the eye and it shows so much detail. Yeah,
it does sound quite mind-blowing. Yeah. Mike, what about using EF lenses via an adapter? What are the limitations here?
Oh, it's a long, no, there's not. The list is very short. It's so short that I've memorized off the top of my head. So the only EF lenses that aren't 100% compatible with these bodies are any super telephoto lens from before 2008. I think there's about 8 of them, and therefore the preset AF button on the front of them doesn't work. Everything else works fine. Just one button doesn't work, and the power zoom on the 35 to 80 f4.5 to 5.6. I remember that. That power zoom doesn't work, but the AF and everything else works. And that's it. That's the list of lenses that aren't 100% compatible with an adapter with these bodies. Everything else works fully. You might get a slight limitation with the how many AF points you get, the full coverage. You only get the full coverage with mostly the RF lenses. You may get a slight, you're limited to maybe only 80% by 100% of the frame rather than 100%. But it's quite much larger than you can do with your SLR.
Yeah.
But actually, you may even get better optical performance because the cameras will compensate for aberrations within the lens, and it will actually produce sharper images from these bodies than equivalent EOS.
Yeah. And what about the in-body image stabilization system? Does that work with the EF lenses too?
Yes, it will work. Again, the thing I always like to say with these cameras is they're bilingual. The fact that they speak RF language, which is a higher speed language, which allows them to do more stuff. But when they want to, they can also speak EF natively. So therefore, there's no difference in performance when you put an EF lens on. While other adapter systems, you have a translation and with any translation, you can kind of make a small mistake in the translation, and rather than complimenting the grandmother's cooking, you've insulted her. You know, these small translation errors can happen, and that happens in these systems, and they lock up. But because the camera speaks natively the same language as the lens, everything works perfectly. So therefore, we can also use the IS system with the body with those lenses. And I think I mentioned earlier on, so if you use the lens with IS in it, they will work together, but the actual quoted figure will not change. It will stay exactly the same. If it's a 4-stops lens, it will still be a 4-stop under the CEPA standard. Although real world situations, you will probably find it's far superior than that. But that's a measurement system that we have to kind of quote by, and the type of performance you'll see benefits, as we talked earlier on, aren't really kind of reproducible in those systems. So yes, and you'll still get IS with non sort of IS lenses. You will get some amazing performance with some of the lenses. You know, we've been hand holding like 50mm 1.2s, and you're getting kind of ridiculous figures like 6 stops or something with a lens, you know, that hasn't got IS in it.
Yeah, your ability to pull out all this information is so impressive. Obviously,
I'm great at pub quizzes too.
We've got another question. Do the 600 and 800 autofocus with the extenders on the R, RP, and RA cameras?
Yes, I did cover that. So there is the only caveat is the actual area size is reduced slightly on those cameras, so you don't get with these lenses will actually have a slightly reduced AF area anyway. It's about 60 by 40, and it kind of drops down to about 40 by 40, which is probably about the same size as most of these sort of DSLR sort of AF area coverage anyway. So you get more AF points and a similar sort of AF coverage for a DSLR.
Yeah, and just
Can
finally,
I add to the adaptive one thing? It's just, I think it's really important because it's a fair deal. Like, of course, the new glass is amazing and it's the ultimate performance, but you know, all the photographers have invested a lot of money in their glass, and with the EF adapter, you can use your glass and still get amazing results, and then very slowly you can build up your new range of lenses. There's 2 tips. One is choose the control ring adapter, because then you have this nice feature of adding this function onto the ring that all the new RF lenses have. And if you're a filmmaker, there's an adapter that you can put an ND filter and variable ND filter inside, and that turns your camera into a really nice, powerful movie camera.
Yeah, Richard, thanks for adding that in. Actually, that's really, really good to add on top. So that's kind of bringing us to the end of this session. So just before we do say goodbye, let's recap on the EOS R system lineup. What would you say are the highlights? Anyone can go for this.
I'll leave that to some of the ambassadors. I think they're the people who represent the people who are going to buy the product. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think, guys? What are your highlights?
Well, for me, if I can start, the highlight definitely is the amount of technology that Canon was able to put in such a small body, and now combined with the new RF lenses, it's just a great combo. And as Richard said, even if you don't want to buy all the new lenses straight away, you can use your EF glass and just go with the best and the most modern technology and the R system. So yeah, it really makes it a winner for me and the work I do.
Yeah, brilliant. What about you, Ilvi?
I'm just amazed by everything in general, the lens, the camera, the way they work together, the fact that everything is so small and quick. And yeah, I had to send it back to Canon, and I'm still sad. The whole box had to go back And I was like, oh no, I want to hold on to things. No, I don't think I've ever been this enthusiastic about gear. Literally,
Wow.
I'm just like, yeah.
That says a lot, I think, definitely.
It does say a lot. I've known Ilvi a while, and that does say a lot.
Yeah. And finally, Richard, do you have anything you'd like to add before we end the session?
You know, Canon made us wait a little bit to get these products in our hands, and you know, but that's I've been working with them for a while. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but it's worth the wait, because now, you know, everything we talked about, if you have that in your hand and if you go out and try it, you will feel it's a big difference. You know, just imagine if you're a user of a 6D Mark II or a 7D Mark II, and you now buy an R6, you get the best of both worlds. You get the speed and the full frame in one package, and it's affordable. There's nothing wrong about that.
Yeah. I think all good things come to those who wait, Richard. So you guys,
it was worth the wait.
You were rewarded. All right, thank you so much, guys. That, of course, brings us to the end of our penultimate session. It's really good, amazing, in fact, to just hear about all the capabilities of these new lenses and how they're going to change the game for photographers on so many levels with so many different shooting scenarios and capabilities. And then coupled with the new cameras, you know, these capabilities extend even more while allowing you to achieve so much. You know, you can be as creative as you want to be. And I think that's what's a really important feature to hammer home about all the technology that we've been talking about today. And I'd like to thank my panelists, my lovely panelists, Martin, Ilvi and Richard. You've been fantastic. Thank you for sharing your stories. And of course, Mike, our Canon expert, who won't be joining us for the next session, I'm afraid. I'm always pretty bummed about that. He's been part of all of them so far. Once again, I just want to say thank you to you guys, the audience, for submitting really well thought out and just really interesting questions that allowing us to dive into the nitty-gritty of what this tech can do. And again, I'd like to apologize if none of your questions came through, but these will be available in a Q&A roundup that will be published on the Canon blog tomorrow. And that brings us to our final session of the evening. We're talking the Image Prograph Pro 300. So we're talking printers. It's an A3 compact printer. Some of you guys may or may not already know that. We've got some great guys to come and talk to you about that, talk to you about their experiences of the printing process and the newly launched Image Prograph Pro 300. Try saying that a few times in quick succession. Now, the idea here is that we've got this incredible printer that's able to print from 8K videos, pull out stills, panoramas, borderless prints. This is a printer that really brings your images to life. So on that note, we're going to play a short video.
Considering the performance and the ability of the Pro 300, it's actually quite a compact unit. It sits under the Pro 1000, so it inherits the same ink and processing system. Also bear in mind that the Pro 300 can print up to A3 Plus from such a small unit, and you know, it doesn't take up so much space in your studio. So it's a real achievement by Canon on this.
Trying out different settings, trying out different papers, literally just experimenting with the printer. And you could do it with confidence because you're still gonna have an outstanding result. I was just thinking how I'm not gonna be afraid of doing my own professional photo prints at home anymore, and basically anyone could do it.
Change not just my workflow, but the way I physically work on shoots, the way I frame situations, the way I work with my brides and grooms, just because of the extra control I have from capture all the way to print.
Canon just made it easy for us.
Can I just say, I am absolutely loving these videos, by the way, that have been playing over the course of this 2-hour session. They're really, really good. So I'm joined by Canon Europe printing expert and inkjet specialist, Saheb Hussain, alongside multi-award winning British photographer and ambassador, Sanjay Jogia. And Wanda Martin, she is back. She's the London-based photographer, and she's also here to answer your questions. Don't forget, don't be shy. Submit your questions and we will try and answer as many of them as we can. So first of all, hi guys, thank you for joining.
Hey.
Hey. Saheb, we're going to dive straight into a question for you. Can you quickly run us through the key features of the Image Prograph Pro 300 and who is it designed for?
Yeah, so as you just said, it's a fine art inkjet photo printer and it can print up to A3+, and not just prints. We're talking about gallery quality prints, and these are prints that photographers will want to showcase, display, maybe even sell, and they can do them all within the comfort of their home, because the form factor and the size is quite small, so it can fit into a home, a small studio quite easily. And because it's an Image Prograph Pro, it's inheriting a lot of the technology that's featured in our larger format machines. The ink formulation, for instance, delivers such a high, wide color gamut, and the printer itself features 10 pigment inks with a chroma optimizer as well to allow for smooth reflections on glossy media. And not only that, the technology that's being brought down from the larger format machines to this smaller compact device is going to enable things like edge-to-edge printing on all types of media, whether it's glossy or fine art, which wasn't able to be done before. And particularly with this size machine printer and the ability to print A3+, monochrome printing is really, really important. And the printer features a newly developed matte black ink and a photo black ink, which is going to deliver super deep blacks whilst retaining details within shadow areas and gradated areas as well. So all around high quality photo printer, and it's going to appeal to people coming into the sort of professional photo printing for the first time, as well as those people who are already printing and looking for an upgrade. And all of that made really easy with a really easy to use user interface and software as well. So a good all-rounder, really.
Yeah, I think an easy-to-use interface is definitely, high up on the priority list. But the fact that you mentioned that all this technology that's trickled down from these bigger printers into something so compact, I think is really quite an important thing to highlight, because it's going to open up the possibilities to people who might not have wanted to do home printing or studio printing because they didn't want this giant thing in their abode. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think also, the making it simpler and easier as well is going to make it more appealing to photographers who've, in the past maybe avoided printing because it has been complicated. And the fact that we're making it easier now is going to open up more opportunities for photographers to print.
Yeah, absolutely. So Wanda, have you done much printing in the past, and how did the Image Prograph Pro 300 compare to past professional printers that you've used?
Basically, I've been doing photography since I was 16, 17. And it's funny how I never really done the printing myself. Obviously, I like seeing my work in a physical form, but every time when I needed a portfolio to impress a client or an agent or submitting images to competitions, I always just went to some external printing companies. And it's funny because I like taking control over the whole photo shoot, obviously from the production part and, like organizing the shooting, the casting, doing the post-production, everything. So I don't even understand anymore. Why would I let the control out of my hands anymore? And now when I got to test the Pro 300, I'm not going to say the full name.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it?
Well, Image Prograph Pro 300. And when I got to test it, I just realized how Canon made our lives much easier with, basically giving us the confidence to do the printing at home or in our studio space. And I was printing out my Palermo pictures, and I was experimenting with different papers, different settings, the software. And so the Palermo pictures I shot on the R6, I was using the new lenses. I was obviously using this printer, the Canon software. So basically we had this whole unified ecosystem that made the workflow very easy and very consistent. So yeah, definitely gave me the confidence, and now I can just do my own gallery quality prints at home.
Yeah, but like you said, it's about putting that control, that creative control back in your hands. You can now control from the beginning to the end what it is that you're working on without having to put it in the hands of someone else. Exactly. And I guess that adds a level of convenience to your life as well, I'm sure. Yeah.
And obviously I was amazed by the quality and the black density and the colors, because I have this painterly inspiration all the time, so the use of colors is very important. It's just crazy how accurate the colors were on the prints.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other questions about.
Yeah, of course. So hey, can you explain to us what exactly skew correction and nozzle misfire detection is, and why do photographers need these features?
Yeah, so I think this kind of comes back to the original point, with making printing easier. And I think, anyone who's tried to do printing in the past, you always come across some sort of issues, whether it's, with paper feeding or whether it's with, the printer just taking time to fire up. And I think, we understand this as Canon. We know that the printing process can be quite difficult. So trying to make it simpler, really. And these two features, nozzle recovery in particular, keeps an eye out on all the nozzles that are on the print head. And there's tiny little sensors to detect when nozzles are getting clogged. And if a nozzle is clogged, we have backup nozzles that will fire away. And it will ensure basically that during a print, you're not going to get any clogged nozzles or any banding appearing in the print. So really good in terms of saving you the hassle of wasting paper, wasting ink. And skew correction. Similarly, when you're loading paper in, sometimes you might not align it properly. And then, you don't want to have to go all the way through a print to realize that, the paper wasn't aligned and you have a border, slightly skewed. So auto skew correction built into the printer will automatically align paper that's not been fed in correctly. And again, saving you on time, money, and, wastage of paper and ink.
I think it's sometimes those little things, isn't it, that you don't realise, like aligning the paper or things aren't printing properly. You don't want to pull your hair out, trying to work out what's wrong or what's happening. You just want something that's going to take care of your printing needs. And it sounds exactly like that's what this printer does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've got deadlines to meet, if you need to produce prints for clients and, you've got a limited amount of paper, etc., that you're using, you want to remove all those barriers. And the Pro 300 just does that, easily.
Yeah. Sanjay, I'm going to ask you a question now. Now, you capture some really vibrant wedding photos. I've seen some of them. They are brilliant. And do you think the Lucia Pro ink system holds up against other professional photography printers?
Yeah, I mean, I've always used Canon printers. So I started with the Pro 1 many years ago and then moved on to this Pro 1000 that's behind me and then tried this Pro 300. And it was seamless from one to the other. So it's essentially exceeded my expectations when it comes to printing. I do a lot of printing for myself, my clients, for print competitions. I judge at these competitions. So we're constantly, looking at prints in a very critical way. And so, it really stands up to a critical eye and, quite literally. And it doesn't just match what's been done before, but it exceeds it, which was mind-blowing because you've got something like this behind me, which is 12 inks, and the Pro 300 is 10 inks, much smaller cartridges, much smaller printer, much lighter printer. And just listening to Saib with all this technology in the background, you just take it for granted. You don't know it's even there. It's just working. It's a bit like the stability controls in your car. It's saving your life constantly. You just have no idea. You get in your car and you drive, and it's the same thing with the printer. You load your images up, you work on them, you press print, and it just does it. It's fantastic. So if you're not, and I think this is the beauty of the Pro 300, in that it comes in at a level for people who really want to start getting into professional level printing or high-end consumer level printing, without necessarily breaking the bank and with just that level of simplicity as well. So you don't have to be a print guru. You don't need to be a print scientist to be able to get gallery quality prints. And I think this is what we were trying to demonstrate with all the work we've been doing during lockdown in the background to create all this material.
Well, someone, like you said, is an aficionado of Canon printers and Canon products, and for you to be able to say that this printer has completely risen the bar, basically raised the bar in terms of image quality, printing, ease of use, compactability. I think that's really saying something about the work that's gone into this.
Indeed. And, the ease of use includes things like not having to switch inks. So as a Canon printer user, I've never had to switch inks, and this continues that, which is great. So, you, as I say, you load your paper, it deals with the paper. You have great software that makes it so easy for you to be able to match what's on your screen on paper as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the most important things about printing. You don't want to look at your picture and then the print is just looking at the colors are wrong, everything's not right. You want it to be true to life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, with the professional print and layout software that's bundled in with the printer, that helps to make the whole thing seem less scary. And I think this is the thing, whenever I speak to people about printing, they always say to me, I don't understand printing. It sounds very complicated. It's a whole new world. There's all these papers, there's all these inks, there's all these printers. What do I do? I just want to press print and go, and that's almost what you need to do with this thing. And it has lots of great features in there as well, which I'm sure we'll be talking about.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about printing without borders. To both of you, Wanda and Sanjay, have either of you tried and tested different paper in the Pro 300, and did you notice any difference in print quality between the paper? I'm going to go with Wanda first.
I was experimenting with different paper types, different media, and I was just playing around basically first. And I guess it's also personal preference. My personal favorites are the A3 plus size images, borderless, printed on glossy paper. But I was using fine art paper and glossy paper, and actually both of them have like amazing quality. And again, as you just said, accurate colors, exactly what I captured in exactly what I color graded, or exactly what I wanted to see in the actual final photo. And I tried to print some monochrome images as well, and I especially love them on the fine art paper, because you have this vivid blacks and really deep blacks, but you still have high dynamic range. So you still have details in the highlights, details in the shadows, and still you have a nice gradation from like blacks to grays. But yeah, I think my personal favorites are still the borderless and glossy media, but all of them are amazing.
Yeah. And like you said, it's down to personal preference, but like you also said, they are all amazing as well. So, and what about you, Sanjay? What are your experiences with print quality and different types of paper?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, every kind of paper has a different character to it, and every kind of paper has a different what we call dot gain. It's how it actually handles the ink and how fine it looks on the surface of the paper. And I have a lot of experience printing on fine art paper, but also on glossy papers, burrito papers, that sort of thing. So whilst I had, but I had to create images of a bride and groom, a couple that we know, and I got to use the R5, which does have an amazing dynamic range. I mean, it was a camera that blew me away completely. And what I couldn't wait to do was to look at those images, the digital files. Once I looked at the digital files, I'm like, I can't wait to print this. And I was sport for choice, because I knew that each of those images will have a different look and feel and different quality on different papers. So if I may, I'm just going to share the screen and show you a couple of things.
Yeah, do it.
So, right, can you see this?
Yeah.
Right, so basically, that's an edge to edge on fine art paper. And what I'll also do is actually show you the digital file so you can see how vibrant it looks there. Yeah. And black and white photos on a glossy paper, which is, has a little bit more contrast, and that was the nature of that image. And you can see that it matches what's on the screen on the camera as well, which is exactly what you always want. So I created different shots in different scenarios, different lighting conditions, different color palettes. And this bit of software here is something that we'll talk about in a moment as well, but that helps you to color match what's on the screen and what comes out of the printer as well. So you can see a vast array of images there. And even that sort of just looking at ink levels and that kind of thing, there's tiny cartridges you can see, but different kinds of papers. And they all have different qualities. So an image like this one here with the girl in the car and this one over here, they're both on different kinds of papers. So the color one's on a fine art paper, the black and white's on a slightly glossier paper, and they give completely different looks and feels and different qualities. So I think the thing here is also being able to express the dynamic range of the file on paper. So reproduce, ultimately, that's a key thing. So it's all very well having the megapixel count and having this great dynamic range digitally, but then you need to sort of translate that to print, and the paper needs to be able to handle that. The printer needs to be able to translate that without banding, smooth graduations, particularly in the shadows. So these are the deepest blacks I've experienced so far.
Yeah. I was going to say, they are so deep and inky, aren't they? They look so good.
But it's deep without being blocky, without having areas that look like you have clusters of black. It's just a very smooth gradation all the way through, which is really what you want to see, because then something like banding becomes a distraction. You can't unsee that. What you want to do is just enjoy the image. So, you know, this lets you do this.
I think you sharing those images, and I have had the pleasure of seeing them physically as well. You know, it really shows you just what this printer can do. I think obviously looking at it through your tablet, laptop, phone, however you're viewing, it looks good, but trust me, it looks a whole lot better in person, and you really get a feel for the colors. Like Sanjay was saying, you know, the black. The black is just so impressive. It's not something that you see very often from, you know, this kind of printing. So, you know, hats off to Canon. I've got a quick question for you, Sanjay. Any tips for selling prints to wedding clients?
Any tips for selling prints to wedding clients? Oh, wow. I think that's
going to be a curveball there.
But no, I think the first thing is, you know, there's an adage in the industry that says you can't sell what you don't show. So if you can show prints, particularly prints that you've made yourself, it becomes much easier to sell these things because they'll want it. It's as simple as that. And you know, if someone were to give you, Lucy, a photo of yourself in your hand and then took it away from you and tore it in half, you'd be shocked. You'd think, I want this. So I think the thing to do is, first of all, show it. Now it's all very well, you know, sending your prints to labs, and I have no issues with that at all. But there's something to be said about learning how to complete the image making cycle, which is production, creating the image, post-production, digital post-production, and then the final physical output. Because that sort of forces you to be more critical of your own processes of your image making when you're there in situ with your bride and the groom, whether it's photojournalism, whether it's wedding photojournalism, or, you know, you're creating portraits, whatever it is. Thinking back to how this image is going to translate on paper, what the process you need to go through to go from that moment creating the image to the output as well. So by being able to simplify that process with the Pro 300, with the professional print and layout software, just how easy the cameras are to use, it gives you that opportunity to produce something that's, you know, basically easy to sell, you know, because it's easier for you to get through that process.
Yeah. So would you say that so someone in your field, is this what you're doing? Do you do that anyway? Do you sell your wedding? Do you sell your wedding prints?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course you do. That's what a wedding photographer does. But I mean, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, a huge part of a wedding photographer's business is selling prints and selling albums. And, you know, again, there's another adage that says that, you know, a photo isn't complete until it's printed. And it's the same thing for a wedding. A wedding isn't complete until the album's printed, or until you've got wall art to celebrate, you know, just the grandeur and the beauty and the color and the emotion and everything that goes into a wedding. So if you're not printing, you're not really finishing your work. You're not doing yourself any justice. You're not doing your brides and grooms any justice.
Yeah. So staying in this realm of paper, Sahib, I've got a question for you. Canon has launched a new paper. What is this paper designed for?
Yeah, so I mean, as Canon, we offer quite a wide range of photo papers, from glossy, luster. We have sort of delved into the fine art range as well. So we have a fine art smooth and we have matte. But the new paper that we're launching with the Pro 300 is premium fine art rough. So as the name suggests, it's a textured paper which has got a sort of a bumpy texture to the structure, and it's really going to add a sort of a three-dimensional touch to prints. So, you know, where images require that sort of expression, where there might be a fabric or you're going for a painting effect. So paper is a bit like lenses. You know, you choose a particular paper for a different effect, just as you would with the lens. So now with this new paper, our actual photo paper range from Canon is you know, covers all the needs, and all the profiles are pre-built into the printers. So it makes it super easy for you to pick up a Canon paper and then just use it with our printers. But of course, you know, as Sanjay mentioned there as well, and you know, we know photographers have their particular papers that they like, that they're used to, that they're accustomed with. So the Pro 300, similar to our larger format printers as well, will work really well with third-party papers as well. So you'll be able to download profiles, you know, from websites and get going. But now our photo paper range is really complete. We've got fine art, smooth, rough, luster, glossy, semi-gloss. We've got it all covered now.
Yeah, covered all corners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to move on now to, kind of seamless workflows. And Sanjay, I've got a question for you. I know we've talked about the kind of ease of use and usability, but just to kind of hammer that point home again, did you find that having a Canon printer simplified the printing process for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the key things I always work toward is consistency. And this is what I love about the Canon ecosystem. So I've only ever used Canon, and Canon lenses, Canon bodies, Canon printers, Canon inks, Canon paper. And you know what you'll get. You know that the systems are designed to work together, which is always a great thing. And there aren't any sort of weak links between them. It's a seamless system. And it's not just the hardware, it's the software that goes with this too. So the professional printing layout software, for example, makes printing very easy. If you're not a seasoned pro when it comes to printing, that's one of the beautiful things about it. Even using the DPP software to, and I think we're going to speak about this, is extracting a still from 8K footage.
Yeah.
And being able to tie everything in together and reproduce an image from that. So that ecosystem and that consistency is really about making life a lot easier. And we, as professionals, we have to consider quality. We have to consider the workflow and productivity. And I think this is part of the DNA of the image prograph system, and just the Canon ecosystem in total, actually, is my belief and my experience as well. So hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. And you touched on something very exciting and interesting that I was going to move on to, pulling photos from 8K video. And this is quite a game-changing feature. You've obviously been testing out the R5, like you mentioned, and you've been capturing 8K and then capturing those stills and printing those stills. What's the experience been like? Tell us a bit more about that, why it's a useful feature of the camera, and of course, the quality of the images.
Okay, so I'm gonna preface this with something. I am a geek. I'm a real geek, and I've always been an early adopter of new technologies, and I was excited about this and scared at the same time. And obviously excited for all obvious reasons, and scared because it suddenly meant things are never going to be the same again. We're all used to that now in this current situation. Things are never going to be the same again. But I think in the landscape of photography, wedding photography, and just the experience we're going to have, I didn't really know what to expect practically. I knew what to expect technically and theoretically, just looking at the stats and looking at the tech sheets. But it was only once I tried this. Now, the other thing I need to say is I got to use the R5, which I'm so privileged working on this project because I got to use the R5. I got to use some incredible RF lenses, which are my favorite lenses of all time. And then I got to take it through the entire process and then print it on the new Pro 300 as well. So I've been really spoilt by Canon on this. So as I said, the whole process was exciting and scary at the same time. So I had a 28-70 f2 mounted on an R5, which is it's a heavy lens, but it's my favorite lens of all time. I absolutely adore this lens. It's not an IS lens, but handheld, no stabilization, as in no external stabilization, no gimbals, no grips, no neck straps. I just handheld this camera and filmed a piece of 8K footage of the bride walking down the stairs, and then pulled a still from it. Simple as that. So I dropped the software I dropped the file into the DPP software, extracted a TIFF. You can select the frame which you want, extract the TIFF, and I was actually sport for choice in terms of the frames I could pull, but I pulled one of my favorite frames from that, extracted that TIFF, processed the TIFF, and you get a 35 megapixel TIFF. That's mind-blowing from a piece of video. So there are going to be lots of moments during a wedding day where things will happen quickly. It may be unpredictable, and you could just film it in 8K. I'm not saying you film the whole day in 8K. That would be a lot of data, but there's going to be certain moments which would be very difficult. People are going to be jostling for position, and you might not be able to just stay in one place the whole time. You can be dynamic and move, film the scene, and then pull a file afterwards. And if I may just share a screen again, I'll show you exactly what I did there. I'll do this very quickly. So this is actually the TIFF out of camera.
That's beautiful.
And then just processing that to make it, look like the rest of the images that I would process. So it has incredible dynamic range, incredible color control. Canon have, these are some of the other images, but just to give you a kind of an idea of how you can achieve that consistency. And in the past, when I've looked at grading video or pulling a still, there's possibly always an issue with matching the way the image looks from the video.
Yeah.
How it would look from a photo. And now you can achieve that consistency. So going back to the whole workflow process and achieving quality and productivity and workflow, it's just another massive avenue that's been opened up to us. I can't wait for this lockdown to end so I can get to weddings and actually start doing this. Yeah, I mean, it's mind blowing. When I first tried this, I was lost for words. I was really absolutely gobsmacked. Amazing.
And I guess as a wedding photographer as well, you know what you've got in your mind, you know what kind of shots you want to get, but being able to pull out stills and frames from 8K means there's a surprise element to it as well. You get images or things that you didn't think you were going to shoot, or I forgot I got that bit, and you could pull out an image. So it kind of opens the realm of possibilities for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, video to printer has never really been a process that's ever occurred to anybody. It's been, still capture to printer, or scan to printer, or negative to printer, or whatever it is. But video to printer is just something that I'm still processing it, if I'm honest. And as we're talking about it, I'm going back in my mind to the situation that we were in at the shoot, and that excitement sort of bubbling up again because, as I said, it's going to change the way I work next year when weddings, or as soon as weddings start again. Lots of possibilities.
Of course. What about you, Wanda? What are your thoughts on the 8K printing?
I haven't had the chance to try it, but now I'm very excited first to try the R5 because I haven't tested it yet.
Yeah. I guess as someone, like you said, who's so into printing, this is going to be a very exciting prospect for you. So I didn't mean to rub it in there that you've not tried it. I've just got a question for you, Sahib. Does the 300 have a roll feed, and what is the limitation on paper length?
I think this is going to be quite a popular question, to be honest. So the answer is that no, it doesn't support a roll feed, and the reason primarily for that was we wanted to keep the size down. So we already made improvements versus the Pixma Pro 10s. We've reduced the size down in volume by about 15%. The weight has actually come down to about 14.4 kilograms. So quite a significant reduction. So adding anything like that would have just made it even more. But of course, we as Canon, we do listen to our end users and the feedback that we get, and through firmware updates on previous printers as well, we've expanded the capability of what size it can print up to. So with the Pro 300, you can actually print up to 39-inch cut sheet lengths, which is quite long. And considering that we are aiming this printer at the sort of semi-pros, those people who are getting into professional photo printing, cut sheet will be a better option. But like I said, we are taking into account the feedback that we get from end users. So we're giving the capability to print up to 39 inches, even with this, but of course without a roll feed.
Yeah. And so, Sanjay, I've got another question for you. How portable is the printer? And as a wedding photographer, could you travel with it without damaging it?
That's an interesting question. I've never thought about traveling with a printer, but it's actually quite light. You got to remember, it's an A3 Plus printer, so it's not something you put in your backpack. But it's easy to pick up and just walk out with, and load into the back of your car. And if you needed to print on site, you could do, because it's actually also a very quick printer. So if you needed to print on, at events, then you could do that. It's not like a laser copier, that sort of speed, like a photocopier. But when you're talking about printing gallery quality prints, from pressing the button to getting the print out, it's a few minutes. So it's entirely possible if you're used to taking a lot of equipment around with you and you've got the space for something like that in your car. I wouldn't call it portable in the sense of, say, a mobile phone, or you know,
you're not going to pick it up and put it under your arm and go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
it's actually light enough just to carry with 2 hands without straining. It's you know, as I said, I've used a Pro 1, which is a much older printer and really heavy. And even this thing behind me, I wouldn't dare move that around my studio without help. But the Pro 300, you can.
To put your back out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'll just caveat that to say that if you are moving it around, do keep it flat.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, as Sanjay said, it's a lot lighter. So I think, you know, moving it from, you know, one location to another shouldn't be a problem as long as you keep it flat for majority of transportation. But you don't tend to, I don't know about you, Sanjay, you don't tend to see these type of printers at weddings, but maybe it might be a trend that sort of catches on.
Yeah, no, I mean, the sort of thing that you see are the kind of smaller die sub printers, but you're talking about a massive compromise in image quality with that compared to this. So, you know, you could justify having something like this at an event if you were there for long enough. So if it was a service that you were providing all day long, not just at weddings, any kind of event, if it's a service you're providing all day long, you can justify taking it there because you'll have the quality that goes with it. You know, it is compared to comparable professional quality, you know, gallery print standard printers. It is quite portable. It's a relative, you know, we're talking very relatively here, but it is quite portable, so you could do it. You know, it's not unfeasible.
It's a possibility. You're thinking about it now, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, you know, just going back to the software, and something that I touched on but we didn't really discuss was creating the sort of the print match prints, where the color match prints, which is like it looks like a contact sheet. And a lot of people, they don't have color management monitors, or they're just using a laptop or something like that, which doesn't have a color management screen on it. The image you see on the screen may not be what comes out of the printer. So this allows you to make adjustments, you know, very small variations of adjustments, and it'll print out in the sheet thumbnails of every variation, and you can just eyeball it and say, right, that's the one I need.
Yeah.
And you type in, and it prints the setting for that thumbnail. What you do is type in those settings, and then your print comes out matching what's on your screen. It's fantastic. So you don't.
It sounds it.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. So if you're not technically minded when it comes to printing, you don't have the experience, this allows you to achieve the accuracy very quickly. So, you know, again, it works anyway in your studio, on site, on location, whatever it is.
Yeah. Oh, Sanjay, I think that's a perfect note to end our final session on. That was really brilliant. Thank you. You've got a really great way of explaining how amazing printing can be and why you need it in your life. With bringing your photography and frame to life with this machine that's basically designed to make printing super simple, whether you're printing 35 megapixel snaps or 8K video, panoramas, borderless prints, printing in matte black, monochrome, you know, images will look truly, truly stunning, as the guys have said. And like Sohaib said, it's ideal for anyone trying to get into pro printing, whether they're amateur, whether they're pro. And, you know, this further cements Canon's commitment to delivering that entire photographic process, from shooting all the way to printing, with cameras, lenses, and a brilliant printer all working together in harmony to deliver, like Sanjay said, that seamless experience. I'd like to just say thank you to Sohaib, Sanjay, and Wanda. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was really nice to hear your insights and your experiences. And unfortunately, that brings us to the end of Canon's Reimagine event. I just want to say thanks to all you guys once again for submitting such brilliant questions. I can't believe it's been 2 hours already. It's gone really quickly. I'd like to point out that any additional questions asked by you guys that didn't get the screen time or the airtime today will be answered for you in a Canon blog going live tomorrow. So make sure you check that out. On that note, I'd also like to thank everybody who's taken the time to tune into this special event. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, and more importantly, that you feel like you've got some real insight and information, and that you can take something away from what you've seen today. I'd also like to thank my Canon ambassadors, or not my Canon ambassadors, the Canon ambassadors, and all our experts for sharing their knowledge and expertise of all the products. It really has been really information overload in such a good way of hearing all about the new product launches. I'd also like to mention that there will be a special episode of Canon's podcast, Shutter Stories, that will be released tomorrow on the Canon blog. So make sure you check that out. It's a really great listen, and I'm not just saying that because I'm the host. I really do recommend it if you want to kind of delve into the features of everything a bit more than what we've discussed today. And finally, I'd like to ask you guys to like and subscribe the channel if you'd like updates on all the new products discussed today, and of course, any other Canon news. And all that's left to say is thank you once again. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.